Jey Uso and Gunther. So last week, I talked about a world where Jey Uso and Gunther could main event one of the two nights of WrestleMania. And there were people like on whatever, anti-Jey Uso Twitter that were sending out the video and sharing the clip. What is this idiot saying? And I wasn't advocating for that to be the case. I was presenting a what if scenario and creating the what if scenario. We use our brains on Notsam Wrestling. We use our brains on this podcast. We explore possibilities. We don't shut things down, okay? That's not what this show is, okay? So no, I mean, but I think more importantly, what I said last week was that the Jey Uso Gunther rivalry had become far more a rivalry of Jey Uso, A, versus himself, and B, versus the audience that didn't believe in him. Now, that audience, of course, as we've pointed out, is generally not heard in arenas, but you don't have to travel very far on the internet to hear that audience. And to live in a world where we go, oh, that's just Twitter being Twitter, that's not true. If the internet is talking, people are talking. There's no such thing as an internet wrestling fan anymore. What wrestling fan doesn't have the internet? It's like when I listen to podcasts and they bring up like internet wrestling fans, I go, how did anybody get your podcast? It's a wrestling podcast. Where is your podcast available other than the internet? Because by definition, if it's a podcast, they'd have to have the internet and they'd have to be using the internet to get wrestling content. That's how they got your podcast. So unless you're talking about your listeners right now, so I don't believe in the separation. I do believe that there's something else. You're in the arena, you kind of get swept up in the moment, and people do have a love for Jey Uso, and people will speak more freely on the internet because you're getting into full sentences. You're not just yaying or booing, and also there's the beautiful thing that is anonymity, and so you could just kind of point out whatever you feel about whatever. But I think that there was an inherent problem in the idea that this story had become Jey Uso versus the audience or versus himself. And that inherent problem was, what about the World Heavyweight Champion? Yes, that's a fascinating story for a performer, but that is a side story. That's not a wrestling story. We need a wrestling story. It is a wrestling match. And boy, did we get it. We got a pure, utter, true wrestling story. Gunther came in on Monday Night Raw and decided to remind the world that this is not Jey's story. This is not Jey Uso needing to find that thing within. This is Jey Uso versus Gunther. And Gunther destroys people. And the WWE took the time to remind us that Jey's self-doubt is the least of his concerns. He's got to fight the ring general. He's got to fight Gunther. And so we have Jimmy Uso, and I love that Jimmy Uso had all the confidence in the world, because that's what they're saying. Jey, you just need to have that confidence. And Jimmy said, Gunther's just a man. He's just a human being, and he's beatable, and I'm going to beat him tonight, and then you're going to beat him at WrestleMania. And then Jimmy Uso went out there, and he got beaten into smithereens. He got beaten bloody, because that's Gunther. That's not a person. And Gunther beat him so bad, he's toying with him. He's going for the cover, and he's lifting up Jimmy's shoulders. And he's going for another cover, and he's lifting up Jimmy's shoulders. And then he finally beats him, but he's not done with him. He attacks him, and Jey comes out to make the save. And then when Jey is helping Jimmy backstage, because Jimmy Uso has already taken a beating bad enough. Confidence be damned. He's already taken a beating bad enough that he needs to be helped backstage. As that help has come, Gunther arrives once more. And he takes everybody down, and he's got zip ties this time. And he zip ties Jey Uso to the ring ropes. In a world where handcuffs have become the norm in professional wrestling, can we just say how much better zip ties are than handcuffs. All of a sudden, zip ties are real life. Handcuffs are a movie prop. Zip ties are real life. When you watch cops, they zip tie behind the back. Everybody is familiar with zip ties. Most of us, God willing, haven't felt the cold steel wrapped around our wrist before. But what we know of handcuffs is, sure, police use handcuffs, but every magician uses handcuffs as well. You assume most handcuffs are trick handcuffs. You go, oh, how did they get this guy handcuffed to the rope? Well, there's just a button. You just push it when you're done with the segment. Zip ties are zip ties. We've all felt zip ties. We've all used zip ties on something or other. Everybody at a point has tried to unlock a zip tie, and it's never been successful for anyone. So to see Jimmy zip tied to the rope, you go, he really can't escape. And that's when Gunther takes this person who has all the confidence that Jey Uso needs to have and still beats him within an inch of his life, beats Jimmy Uso so bloody that even Gunther is covered in blood, but it's not Gunther blood, it's Uso blood. And Jey is watching his brother beaten bloody. He's watching the blood of his own family smeared across the chest and arms and legs of Gunther. Gunther, like an absolute maniacal savage, licking his fingers like a maniac. And then I just love, and I talked about this on the Raw Recap podcast as well, just for the pure art, the pure metaphor of it all. Gunther dangling the world heavyweight title for Jey Uso to try to grab, and Jey Uso doing everything he could to grab the title, but he couldn't because he was zip tied to the ropes. He couldn't help his brother, and he couldn't get the championship. So now all of a sudden, we're not just looking at somebody who is trying to help his brother but can't get it. In that moment, we're witnessing a metaphor for Jey Uso being in a position where no matter how bad he wants it, no matter how much this is his time or this is his moment, it's Gunther. Gunther is the zip tie of wrestling. You can't break him. He's not going to let you have it. And just the visuals it created. One of the times when I can't imagine anybody denying that blood brings this story from an 8 to a 10. I mean, you could have never watched wrestling before in your life, and you watch that segment. I know who the good guy is. I know who the bad guy is, and I will buy a ticket to see the good guy beat the bad guy. And that's what wrestling is. It is so difficult in the modern age to stick to a wrestling story. And I think we had drifted away from a pure wrestling story, but we are back. And it is more so than ever that you watch that segment. And that is the type of segment that makes you buy a ticket, that makes you turn on Peacock, that makes you do whatever you got to do to watch this show, because you want to see the good guy beat the bad guy, and you want to find out how on earth the good guy is going to beat that bad guy. This is what Jey Uso versus Gunther needed. It's not a reflection of what people are saying on Twitter. We've got so much of that. And by the way, that is the foundation for who Jey Uso is now. It's great to acknowledge the reality of what's going on. But I don't think that just acknowledging the reality of what's going on is enough to sell a WrestleMania match. It has to be so big to sell a WrestleMania match. I think you need to do more, and that's what this is. To take that as a foundation, but then tell a wrestling story in the ring that convinces people to want to watch this match. And I think that that's what Jey Uso and Gunther and Jimmy and everything that happened in that segment, I think that's exactly what they did. And I thought it was great.